Earlier that same morning, Shinji stepped up to his school locker to change into his indoor shoes before class started. The moment his hand reached inside the small metal box, he spotted something sitting right on top of his stuff. It was an envelope. Surprised, he quickly glanced left and right down the hallway to see if anyone nearby had just dropped it off. Nobody was there. He picked up the envelope, turned it over in his hands, and felt a rush of excitement when he realized what it was. It was a love letter. However, there was no name written on the front and no return address on the back. It was totally anonymous. Who could have put it there? The mystery made his heart beat faster. After a second, he realized he did not even care who sent it. The only thing that mattered was that an actual real-life girl had feelings for him. In his head, he imagined this mystery girl as a sweet, beautiful angel who had fallen for him from afar. Just knowing someone cared about him that much washed away all his doubts and worries. A giant, goofy smile started spreading across his face. Right at that exact second, a heavy arm wrapped around his neck and yanked him backward. His friend grinned at him, immediately pointing out that Shinji looked way too happy for a random morning at school. Shinji instantly frowned and gave him an annoyed, troubled look, but his friend just laughed it off, pretending Shinji was only making a sour face because he had to look at his friend's ugly mug first thing in the morning. Shinji did not even bother arguing back. His brain was completely floating on cloud 9. For the first time in forever, the entire world felt like a bright, sunny place. Of course, if there was one single person on this planet Shinji did not want to run into right at this magical moment, it was the guy standing right next to him. That person sat comfortably at the very top of his list of people to avoid. It was none other than the school's golden boy, Ichinose Hinata. Every single romance, drama, or lucky event in this whole school always started and ended with this dude. It was not even a joke. Almost every cute girl's storyline revolved around Hinata like he was the center of the universe. In Shinji's mind, Hinata was basically a handsome anime protagonist, the ultimate demon lord of all romantic comedy tropes. Whenever love was in the air, you could bet your life savings that Hinata was the one causing it. A sudden panic hit Shinji. If Hinata found out about this love letter, his nosy main character instincts would kick in, and he would definitely try to butt in and investigate. Shinji made a solid vow right then and there. Hinata could never ever know about this paper. Unfortunately, Shinji was terrible at acting normal. The moment he tried to quickly slide the envelope behind his back, Hinata's sharp eyes locked onto his hands. Hinata asked what he was trying so hard to hide. Shinji panicked, raised his voice a little too fast, and swore on his life that he was not hiding a single thing. Before the awkward tension got any worse, a bright, bubbly voice shouted down the corridor, begging Hinata to slow down and wait up. Quick, light footsteps clicked against the hard floor as a pretty girl came running toward them. She caught her breath and playfully complained that Hinata walked way too fast for her to keep up. Hinata immediately turned, gave an easy smile, and apologized to Rika. He explained that he only sped up because he saw Shinji looking unusually happy and wanted to catch up with him. Looking at her face, Hinata noticed that the morning breeze had completely messed up her hair. Rika just laughed it off, saying she would fix it up in no time. She then turned to Shinji, flashing a big, cheerful morning smile, and asked why he was in such a fantastic mood today. The direct question caught Shinji completely off guard, making his face freeze up. The girl standing in front of them was Sakuragi Rika. After talking for a bit, she turned right back to give all her attention to Hinata. Just like Hinata, she had been his childhood friend since they were tiny kids. Back then, they used to run around and play together all day long. But once middle school started, everything changed. Rika started styling her hair, dressing up cute, and putting all her energy into staying glued to Hinata's side. To put it bluntly, Rika was officially a member of the Ichinose Hinata Harem Club. That title fit her way better than just regular childhood friend. Watching them stand side by side only proved Shinji's point. Hinata and Rika were radiating so much bright, blinding, couple-like energy this early in the morning that it literally hurt his eyes. This was the exact reason Shinji hated the so-called light element people. They were way too shiny for a regular background guy like him. More than anything, he just wanted to escape somewhere quiet so he could tear open his letter in peace. Shinji casually announced that he had some urgent stuff to take care of and needed to head to class early. He told them not to rush, waved a half-hearted goodbye, and walked away before they could say another word. Deep down, Shinji really could not stand Hinata. It had been like that for years, and it was not a feeling he could just switch off. In Shinji's eyes, Hinata was born to be the main character of life. He was like the blazing sun that naturally pulled everyone into his orbit. Standing next to him only made Shinji look like an awkward, pathetic loser who was forced to play the background role in someone else's movie. The giant gap between them made Shinji feel completely invisible. But as he gripped the envelope in his pocket, a brand new spark lit up inside his chest. That loser role was only true until today. For the first time in his life, he, Usui Shinji, was the main character. Finding a quiet spot, he carefully ripped open the paper and read the words. A girl wrote that she had strong feelings for him and wanted to meet behind the school building during the lunch break. Shinji's eyes went wide with pure excitement. As he stared at the neat, modest handwriting, he started dreaming about who she could be. The polite, quiet writing style made him think she was probably a lot like him. Maybe a shy, quiet girl who hated the spotlight and gathered every ounce of courage she had just to slip this note into his locker. If she had worked up that much bravery just to confess, he knew he had to be a real man and answer her feelings with total honesty and kindness. His imagination went into overdrive. He started planning their entire future starting from day one. An aquarium date sounded like the absolute best romantic starter. They could walk in the dark, watching the glowing jellyfish together. But wait, what if the zoo was better? They could look at cute animals and laugh. A movie theater was another classic choice. Or maybe a quiet, cozy cafe where they could sip sweet drinks, chat for hours, and completely forget about the rest of the world. Every single idea felt amazing. Shinji pumped his fist in the air, his chest swelling with pure joy. He knew he was acting like a total weirdo creep right now, grinning at a piece of paper, but he could not stop his brain from running wild. He let out a goofy little giggle. In his mind, lunchtime today was going to be the official turning point where his boring life turned into an amazing romance anime. Finally, the lunch bell rang. Shinji rushed behind the school building, his heart pounding like a drum. When he arrived, a girl was already waiting there, but when she turned around and saw him, her face went totally blank with confusion. She tilted her head, clearly wondering who this random guy was. Shinji felt a little nervous, cleared his throat, and introduced himself as Usui Shinji. He held up the note, saying he came because of the confession letter. The girl's eyes went wide with shock. She stammered out that the letter was supposed to be in Ichinose Hinata's shoebox, not his. Those words hit Shinji like a truck. A cold, dreadful feeling sank straight to the bottom of his stomach as he repeated Hinata's name in his head. The girl quickly glanced upward at the row of lockers, looking at Hinata's box, which sat directly above Shinji's locker. Their names were right on top of each other on the roster. The letter meant for the school prince had accidentally dropped down one slot and landed in Shinji's box. The whole thing was just a stupid, clumsy mistake. Shinji stood frozen, staring blankly into the distance. It was for the handsome demon lord after all. Reality crashed down hard on his head, and he cursed the school's alphabetical seating and locker order for destroying his life. The girl bowed her head deeply, apologizing over and over for the mix-up. Shinji forced out a weak smile and told her it was totally fine. Deep down, he knew she did not do it on purpose, but the emotional damage was already done. The moment she left, Shinji dropped his face straight into his palms and let out a long, painful groan. How could anyone mess up a locker delivery that badly? But the absolute worst part was remembering his own crazy daydreams. The aquarium, the zoo, the movies, the late-night cafe talks. All those stupid, cheesy fantasies were now a burning reminder of how big of an idiot he had been. He had gotten completely carried away by his own delusions. There was nothing more embarrassing in the entire universe. He wished he could turn back time and wipe his own memory clean. A loud, miserable sigh tore out of his chest as the cruel reality crushed his spirit. Back inside the classroom, the sun was shining brightly and other students were laughing and eating, but Shinji sat at his desk looking like a walking rain cloud. Hinata walked over with a big smile, ready to invite him to eat together since it was lunchtime. But seeing Shinji wrapped in dark, gloomy energy, Hinata stopped. He asked why Shinji went from being super happy this morning to looking completely dead inside. To Shinji, that happy morning version of himself felt like a fake guy who had never even existed. Hinata chuckled softly and offered to sit and listen if Shinji just needed to vent his frustrations. Shinji appreciated the nice gesture and muttered a quiet thanks. But there was no way in hell he would ever admit he had spent his entire morning blushing over a love letter meant for Hinata. He would rather die first. Hinata noticed that Shinji did not have any food on his desk and asked why he was not eating. Shinji made up a quick excuse, claiming he did not feel like fighting the crowd at the cafeteria. Instead of pushing him, Hinata brought up a quick favor. He pulled a cute smartphone out of his pocket and asked if Shinji could run it over to Runa. Shinji blinked in surprise. recognizing the phone immediately. Hinata explained that his little sister had left it on the kitchen table that morning and he had completely forgotten to give it to her. He added that Runa was always super mean and scary toward him, so it would go way smoother if Shinji went instead. Plus, Hinata admitted he was too lazy to walk after eating his lunch. He held the phone out with a friendly grin, waiting for Shinji to take it. Shinji sighed, gave up, and took the phone. Walking down the noisy hallway, Shinji could not help but wonder if Hinata had planned this whole thing just to make him do his chores. According to Runa, the two siblings had a terrible relationship. Hinata was always indecisive, overthinking everything, and surrounded by tons of random girls, which drove Runa crazy. Because they were blood-related, their personalities clashed constantly. If Hinata was just an evil jerk, it would be easy to take Runa's side, but Hinata was actually a decent guy, so Shinji preferred not to get stuck in the middle of their family drama. He finally reached her first-year classroom. He slid the door open and stepped inside. Across the room, Runa was laughing with a bunch of her new friends. Even though she had only been at this high school for a single month, she was already super popular. It was obvious she shared the same dazzling charm as her older brother. Shinji called her name from the doorway and said her brother had sent him with an errand. The entire classroom went quiet, and several kids stared curiously as Runa stood up and walked over to the door. When Shinji held out the phone, Runa's eyes lit up with pure joy. She grabbed it, hugged it to her chest, and breathed a huge sigh of relief, saying she had felt completely lost all morning without it. She beamed a giant smile, thanked him cheerfully, and casually called him Shin-ni right in front of everyone. A few nearby classmates whispered in shock at the super close nickname. Shinji panicked a bit, quickly reminding her that they were standing in the middle of a crowded school hallway. Shinji froze, feeling super awkward under all the staring eyes. Runa just smiled innocently and asked what was wrong with calling him Shin-ni since they had known each other forever. Shinji whispered back that he hated drawing attention to himself, and using cute nicknames was making everyone stare. Runa nodded and agreed not to cause a scene, but in her heart, he was still her precious Shin-ni, and she was not planning to change that anytime soon. Shinji looked at her and wondered why she was always so sweet to him while treating her actual brother like garbage. She looked up to Shinji like a real, reliable big brother. Before he could leave, Runa suddenly asked if they could walk home together after school finishes. Shinji was caught off guard and asked why she wanted that. Runa pouted, acting like the answer should be totally obvious. Ever since she started at this high school, she had been waiting every single day for him to come visit her class. Shinji sighed and reminded her that she was already way too popular, so hanging out together would only start wild rumors. The quiet whispers from the students behind them proved his point, with kids asking who the guy talking to the cute freshman was. Shinji knew it was already too late to avoid the gossip. Still, he needed some time alone to recover from his morning disaster. He promised to make it up to her another day and begged to go home alone just for today. Runa looked at his tired face, saw that something was bothering him, and gently let him off the hook. The next morning, Shinji walked into school, hoping for a completely normal day. But when he pulled open his shoe locker, his brain short-circuited. There was another envelope sitting right inside. The tiny bit of peace he had managed to rebuild instantly shattered into pieces. He froze, staring in disbelief. At first, he assumed someone had dropped another letter into the wrong box for the second day in a row, but when he pulled it out, he realized this was completely different. The envelope was pitch black, looking nothing like a sweet, cute love letter, and written clearly across the front in bold, perfect handwriting was the name Usui Shinji. There was no mistake this time. This creepy note was 100% meant for him. Shinji walked over to a quiet courtyard bench and sat down alone, turning the dark envelope over and over. It looked weirdly heavy and dark. If it had little cute drawings, hearts, or stars on it, that would make sense. But this was just solid, cold black paper from edge to edge. Nobody used paper like this unless they were trying to send a serious message. He stared at it for several minutes, trying to figure out what kind of girl would send something so spooky. A chilling thought crossed his mind. Maybe this was not a confession at all, but some kind of cursed chain letter meant to ruin his day. His fingers worked the edge of the paper and slid the letter out. If there was even a tiny chance someone genuinely liked him, it would be rude to leave them waiting. But the second his eyes scanned the first line, a cold shiver ran straight down his spine. The letter claimed to know every single detail about his daily life. It listed his favorite foods, his favorite animals, his daily habits, and stated plainly that someone was watching him every second of the day wherever he went. The terrifying words kept going. The unknown writer swore she would never let him go and promised that no other girl would ever be allowed to touch him. Every single sentence was filled with intense, dark obsession. It declared that nobody in the whole wide world could ever love him as deeply as she did. Then came the final line. It bluntly stated that if he ever dared to date another girl, she would track him down and kill him. Shinji sat completely frozen, his breath catching in his throat. This was not a love letter. This was an outright death threat disguised as romantic feelings. Yesterday's letter was an innocent mistake, but today's letter was something straight out of a horror movie. His hands started shaking as he lowered the dark paper. What kind of crazy situation had he gotten himself into? He leaned back against the bench, staring blankly up at the sky, realizing that his luck with girls was not just bad. It was totally cursed. When the final school bell rang, Runa ran up to him with a bright smile, asking once again if they could walk home together. Shinji kept his head down, apologized, and said he really needed to go home alone again. Runa pouted, clearly disappointed. Shinji quickly made up an excuse about having tons of personal errands and chores to handle before nightfall. In reality, he was terrified that the crazy stalker who wrote the black letter might be watching him right now, and he did not want to drag innocent Runa into any danger. Runa crossed her arms and reminded him of his promise to make it up to her. Shinji nodded quickly, promising to treat her to whatever she wanted later as long as she let him go today. Runa finally agreed, warning him with a cheeky grin that her reward was going to be super expensive. Shinji waved goodbye and hurried down the hallway, while Runa stood quietly by herself, watching his back until he completely disappeared around the corner. Back in his bedroom, Shinji threw himself onto his bed, staring at the ceiling with the black letter resting on his desk. He racked his brain, but he could not think of a single person who would write something so unhinged. Knowing his favorite snacks and daily routine was creepy on another level. The dark paper and sharp, neat handwriting made it feel 100% like the work of an actual stalker. If it had been sent to Hinata, it would make sense since crazy fangirls existed, but sending it to Shinji made no sense at all. He wondered if someone was pulling an elaborate prank on him, but using his exact full name and personal habits felt way too detailed for a simple joke. Suddenly, another thought hit him. He remembered that he still needed to return yesterday's pink love letter to the girl from the lunch meeting. He reached into his school backpack to grab it, but after digging through all his books and folders, his hands came up completely empty. The pink love letter was gone. Shinji stopped and thought back carefully. He knew for a fact that he had put that letter in his bag and brought it home yesterday. Did the stalker break into his room and steal it? No, that was way too crazy. He quickly shook his head, telling himself that he must have just dropped it somewhere at school. He muttered a quick apology to the girl in his thoughts, promising to search for it in his classroom tomorrow. Besides, his midterm exams were coming up fast next week. He did not have the time to waste his life stressing over mysterious letters. With his mother working a late-night hospital shift, the house was completely empty and quiet. Feeling his stomach rumble, Shinji grabbed his jacket and wallet to head over to the local convenience store for some food. A little while later, Shinji was walking back under the night sky, carrying a plastic shopping bag filled with microwave dinners, some sweet pastries, a can of soda, and instant noodles. It was a waste of his pocket money, but he knew studying late at night was impossible without junk food. A gentle, cool breeze blew against his face as he walked down the quiet residential street. The late April air was mild and super comfortable, not too hot and not too cold. He secretly wished this peaceful spring weather could stay forever before the sticky summer humidity ruined everything. Suddenly, a shadow near a dark alleyway caught his attention. Shinji stopped dead in his tracks. A figure wearing a dark hoodie was standing completely still right in front of a house down the road. Shinji's heart began to race. The words from the black letter about someone watching him day and night flashed in his mind. Could this actually be the person who wrote it? Shinji gathered his courage and called out into the dark. The moment his voice echoed down the street, the hooded figure flinched, spun around, and bolted into the darkness at full speed. Shinji did not hesitate. He gripped his shopping bag and sprinted right after them. If this person was running away like guilty criminal, they definitely had to be the stalker. Questions rushed through his head as his sneakers pounded against the asphalt. How long had they been watching him? Why pick on a regular guy like him? The only way to get answers was to catch them right now. The hooded person was insanely fast. Even while sprinting at top speed, they kept one hand tightly pressed against their hood to keep their face hidden. Shinji pushed his legs harder, cutting through narrow back alleys, but he just could not close the gap. The wind whipped past them, but the runner showed no signs of slowing down. Shinji reached his hand out, panting heavily, but after taking a sharp turn around a dark corner, the person completely vanished into thin air. Shinji finally collapsed onto his knees, gasping for air as his lungs burned. He dropped his bag and slammed his fist onto the pavement in frustration. That runner moved like they had memorized every single escape route in this neighborhood. But during the chase, Shinji had heard their soft, high-pitched breathing. Based on the slim body shape and breathing sounds, the stalker was almost certainly a girl. The black letter was definitely real. Just as he was catching his breath, a familiar voice called his name from behind. Shinji jumped in surprise and turned around to see Runa standing under a street lamp, holding a small grocery bag. She looked at him with wide, confused eyes, asking what he was doing out so late, looking completely exhausted and covered in sweat. Shinji quickly stood up, rubbed the back of his neck, and made up a quick excuse, saying he was just taking an intense jog to clear his head after studying. Runa gave him a super suspicious look, clearly not buying the story that someone would sprint in normal clothes just to relax. Shinji quickly changed the subject and asked why she was walking around at this hour. Runa smiled and held up her bag, explaining that she had just run out of soy sauce while cooking dinner. Realizing that Shinji had not eaten dinner yet and that his mom was working the night shift, Runa's eyes sparkled. She grabbed his arm and demanded that he come over to her house so they could eat together, reminding him that this could count toward the favor he owed her. Left with no way out, Shinji gave in and followed her home. Soon, the two of them were hanging out in the warm kitchen at the Ichino's house. The smell of fresh food filled the room, and after eating a delicious home-cooked meal, Shinji helped wash the plates while Runa wiped down the counters. Runa turned to him with a proud grin and asked how the food tasted. Shinji honestly told her it was amazing and that her cooking was getting better every single day. Runa cheered happily, bragging that she had officially conquered his stomach, which made Shinji laugh and tell her not to get too full of herself. For a little while, the fun atmosphere completely pushed the scary hooded stalker out of his mind. After cleaning up, Runa gently pushed Shinji onto the living room sofa and told him to relax with some hot tea. She admitted that she loved cooking for people who actually appreciated it, complaining that her brother Hinata never said a single nice word about her meals. When Shinji asked about their parents, Runa sighed and explained that their jobs forced them to travel all over the world, so she barely even knew which country they were currently living in. She looked at Shinji softly, muttering that she wished Hinata could be as sweet and thoughtful as him. She poured some tea and asked why Hinata was always out so late every single night. Shinji figured popular guys just had a million friends to hang out with. He then pointed out that Runa was also super popular at school. Runa paused, admitting that while lots of kids crowded around her, most of them only wanted to get closer to Hinata or look cool by being her friend. She hated fake, shallow relationships like that. Shinji muttered that being popular sounded exhausting and that nobody ever bothered paying attention to a plain guy like him. Even as the words left his mouth, the creepy black letter flashed in his mind. Runa looked at him curiously, asking if he was interested in romance. Shinji replied that having someone throw intense feelings at you out of nowhere would just be confusing and weird. Runa gave a small pout and asked if he really thought she was some cold robot who did not care about love. She was a normal high school girl who dreamed about dating too. She started listing off fun date ideas, an aquarium, a zoo, or an amusement park, before deciding that going to the movie theater sounded like the absolute best first date. The mention of those exact same date spots made Shinji's face turn bright red, remembering his silly daydreams from that morning. Runa noticed his strange look and asked which date he thought was best. To hide his embarrassment, Shinji quickly agreed that going to the movies was probably the best choice. Runa smiled mischievously. She pointed out that since Shinji was a total shut-in who hated going outside, they should go to the movies together as practice for a real date, which would also count as his promised payback to her. Shinji groaned, calling it a huge pain, but Runa looked at him with big, hopeful eyes, begging for a serious promise. Giving up, Shinji looked her in the eyes and promised that they would go on a movie date together soon. By the time they finished talking, it was already late into the night. Shinji stood up to leave, mentioning that he needed to head home and cram for his upcoming exams. Runa gently tugged on the edge of his sleeve, whispering with a soft blush that she would not mind at all if he stayed a little longer. Shinji froze for a second, totally flustered, before reminding her that failing his tests would be a total disaster. Runa laughed, let him go, and told him to walk safely, teasing him that he was surprisingly clueless when it came to girls. As he stepped out the front door, Shinji casually reminded her to take out the burnable trash bags tonight since tomorrow was collection day. Runa smiled warmly and wished him a good night, and Shinji said good night back as the heavy front door clicked shut behind him. Walking down the dark, quiet driveway, a strange, uneasy feeling crept back into Shinji's chest. He glanced over at the neat pile of trash bags sitting beside the Ichino's entrance, waiting for the morning garbage truck. Staring at someone else's trash was weird, but as his eyes lingered on the plastic bag, something inside caught his attention. It was a faint, familiar shape that made his stomach drop, a detail that felt so strangely recognizable, even though it was something that should not possibly be there.